Welcome to Pulse of Culture. I'm Karolina Szapland. Warsaw Museum of the History of Polish Jews, known as POLIN, is celebrating a remarkable milestone, its 10th anniversary, as a cornerstone of Poland's cultural landscape. Over the past decade, POLIN has illuminated the rich history and contribution of the once thriving Jewish community. Located on the historic grounds of Warsaw Ghetto, this museum stands as both a tribute to the resilience of Polish Jews and a vibrant cultural hub that draws countless visitors each year. Joining us in the studio is Franciszek Bojańczyk to share the highs and lows of the last decade. Thank you so much for coming here.
My
Franciszek.
pleasure.
So, a decade of a museum, what's been the biggest high for you so far?
Well, I think the biggest high is the number of people we have welcomed throughout the past decade. We exist only 10 years, although the idea is older than that. The idea to create the museum is already 30 years old. But in only 10 years, we have welcomed more than 5 million people to the building, close to 3 million people to the core exhibition alone. We're the third most visited site in Warsaw. And it's wonderful to see that. Recently I had a visitor who was asking, is this whole big building dedicated only to the history of Polish Jews? It is. It's not only. It's a magnificent history. It's a very important chapter of the history of Poland. But to be such a popular place telling the history of Polish Jews, it proved to be a success.
So can you share with us any special close to your heart artifact, any trade secrets from inside of Poland?
The exhibition, the core exhibition that we opened in 2014, in October 2014, was one of the first exhibitions in Poland which was telling a story rather than showing artifacts. In the very beginning, our collection was not that big. Throughout the decade, we actually accumulated more than 19,000 objects. So there are a lot of very interesting artifacts in our collection, but to me, the most special one is something that you can actually see outside of the museum. When you enter the building, to your right, there is a brick, but it's not just a simple brick, it's a mezuzah that is usually put at the entrance to a Jewish home, to a Jewish institution. And this special mezuzah is made out of a brick that was found in one of the locations of the former Warsaw Ghetto. It shows us how connected is the story that we're telling with the location where we are located, the Muranów district, the former ghetto. So it's something that some visitors just don't see when they enter the museum. It was chosen in a contest, 2 architects won this contest, and now we have this very special mezuzah at the entrance of the museum.
So POLIN is loved by many, and even though the design of the museum is very modern indeed, this museum been uniformly loved from the word go. What do you think, especially given the new museum that just opened in Warsaw, what do you think is the key of the success of your building?
Well, the design of the building is very special, as you say. It's probably also an attraction of its own. It was actually awarded with many awards, architecture awards. But I think what makes this museum special is the story and the educational program that we are doing. During the past decade, more than 4 million students participated in the activities that we organize, workshops, lectures. This is the source of success of our museum.
So would you say, who is your core, who's your core target? Is it the students? Is it the tourists? Is it the people of Warsaw? What would you say?
Usually when people think of museums that are usually known under the general description of a Jewish museum, they think, those museums are usually visited by Jews.
Yeah.
Our museum is different because, first of all, it's not only organized by Jewish community. It's a joint venture of the City of Warsaw, Ministry of Culture, and also an NGO organization. But second of all, it's a museum that is addressed to everyone, mostly to people who do not have Jewish ancestry. Before the pandemic, most of our visitors were from outside of Poland. Some of them had Jewish roots, but not all of them. Now it's half and half, meaning that half of our visitors are from Poland. And it would be, I think, very difficult to find a student in the city of Warsaw who has not visited our museum yet. And this is our target, this is our goal also, to attract young people from around the country, for them to see that the history of Jews in Poland is not a history of Holocaust only. It's a story of vibrant community. It's a story of people that have been living here for 1,000 years and still live here because, as we very much like to underline in our core exhibition, the story that we're telling is not ending. It's actually an ongoing story.
So would you say that your museum and your museum's success somewhat changed the narrative surrounding Polish Jews, the population that, you know, stayed and remained after the war and after 1968?
Oh yes, definitely. You know, one of the guests during our anniversary gala, who was the director of the POLIN Museum for many, many years, he was actually a director of the museum when it opened in 2014, Professor Dariusz Stola, said, it's kind of a joke, but it says a lot, that before the museum opened, the anti-Semites didn't know the word Polin. Now, even if they criticize Poland for being, you know, Polin, not Poland, as we sometimes hear in the slogans, we see that we've made an impact.
And could you just bring for our viewers, what is the special meaning behind Polin?
Polin is actually a legend that tells how Jews came to Poland. They were looking for a shelter. They were asking God for a suggestion where to go. And they were looking, they were waiting, and finally they got an instruction, go to the east. And once they came here to something that we now call Poland, they started to listen to birds who were singing Polin, Polin, which in Hebrew means stay here, you shall rest here. So this is Polin. Everybody, well, maybe it's an exaggeration, but a lot of people now know what Polin stands for. This is only a legend, but it says a lot about a thriving Jewish community that, you know, 80% of Jews in 1700s were living in Polish lands. It's something.
So it's a very positive narrative. But given the current political landscape and the big controversy that surrounds the current situation in Israel, have you experienced any of that backlash directed at you in Polin?
We did. You know, you say it's a positive story. It's indeed a positive story, but it's very important to us that we are telling a story from the Jewish perspective, which not always is very positive. You know, sometimes it's a story of pogroms and discrimination. Sometimes it's a story of success, of this beautiful wooden synagogue that we have in the very center of the exhibition, which shows us to what extent Jews of Poland felt secure and safe in Poland in the 16th and 17th century. But when we think about the current situation, it very much affects our institution, but also other museums throughout the globe which deal with Jewish past. We are a museum that tells the story of the history of Polish Jews. We are not a museum of the State of Israel. We think that the State of Israel is a very important place for Jews around the globe. We also tell a story of founders of the State of Israel, so it would not make any sense to, you know, not talk about the State of Israel, but we very much underline that, you know, it's not something that we are telling.
But it's very hard to tell a story without the artifacts. And given that the history of the Jews in Poland, given the Holocaust, was it a big challenge to fill this beautiful building with actual, you know, for use of a better word, stuff?
It was difficult. It is still difficult, although I would say that it was a choice made by the curators, by the wonderful team of historians from around the globe who were creating the core exhibition. It was a choice to focus on the story, which at the time when the museum was being created was not very common. Now, you know, the narrative museum, as we call it, it's a very actually common type of a museum. They decided to tell the story with some artifacts, not, you know, use the artifacts as the main source because the story itself is just fascinating. Now, after those many years, or not that many years, after a decade, we have many more objects, and we still today find people who are interested in the story we're telling, and they're coming to us and saying, you know, I have this and that object. I just want to dedicate it to the museum. I want to donate it because to me, it doesn't mean that much, but to you, it might mean something. And we meet with a lot of people who are descendants of Polish Jews who come from very different countries, and they give us objects that to them are very simple, but to us are extremely important.
So can you name one of those simple but poignant objects that you had donated in a recent years?
Well, we got a donation from one of our friends from the United States who donated a talit, so a religious shawl, who he has in the family for many decades. This talit was given to one of his ancestors when he was visiting his town, a town that he had left, emigrated to the United States. He was from south of Poland. So this friend of the museum decided now during the 10th anniversary to donate this shawl to us, which is in a way a journey back home. You know, the talit is coming back to Poland. It will become part of our collections. It's a simple object. You know, talit is something that many Jewish families have, Jewish men especially. But to us, it's special because it's something that was donated to someone who already emigrated, and the family who stayed in Poland was killed during the Holocaust. And now we have this one of very few remaining objects in our collections.
And it's well known that POLIN Museum is in that group of the A-list museums, you know, the global, really important museums. What is the key to your success? You know, if there's any other museum in Poland that would like to join this elite club, what's the POLIN's way?
Well, our way is very much about not only telling the story as we just know everything, because we don't. We actually want to make our visitors, make our audience part of the story we're telling. We are very much in contact with the people. We want to converse, we want to discuss with our audience. We want to create a space that is great for dialogue. And I think this is something that stays very important, and it will be important for us in the near future, especially given the political context. We don't want to tell a story that you just accept and you go further with that. We want to create space that will make people maybe more conscious about themselves. And this is what we do in our educational program. This is what we do when we target anti-Semitism. This is what we do when we take people to our core exhibition. We just don't tell them, this is the story, accept it. We want to converse with them.
And is this conversation, is it the sort of an inspiration for your themed exhibition? What are we to expect in the future? What new exciting exhibitions, stories, could you just advertise the future, the next 10 years of POLIN to us?
Sure. I'm glad that you actually mentioned conversation in context of our temporary exhibitions, because the temporary exhibition that we are having still until mid-December is about shtetls, and it's about post-Jewish towns around the country. It's an exhibition for people who want to know more about their towns around Poland, towns that used to be shtetls, Polish Jewish towns, or Polish-Ukrainian Jewish towns, Polish-Belarusian Ukrainian Jewish towns. It's something that they can see, discuss, maybe discover at our core exhibition. But in the near future, we are celebrating the anniversary of the ending of the Second World War. So the next exhibition will be about that, 1945.
Well, that sounds really, really interesting. Thank you so much for coming here.
My pleasure. Thank you for hosting me.
And I was Karolina Shapland, and this is Pulse of Culture. Thank you for watching us.